Over the past few years, nothing has proven the failures of multiculturalism or broader immigration policy in Europe than its annual Christmas markets. Many, as you know, have resulted in utter tragedy, and this year is no exception. If anything, the scenes coming out now are even worse than before. First, we turn our attention to Brussels. Take a look at who turned up to their Christmas markets. Islamic activists decided, despite all of the bad history with Muslims and European Christmas markets, that this was the best place to hold their Palestinian grievance march. This, to me, easily represents significant disrespect to your host country, a country that's given you the ability to speak out freely, to practice your religion freely, and also to live around people who aren't the same as you. And yet, this is how they repay them, by disturbing not political ideologues, but average families simply trying to enjoy a special time in the year. Something you have to know about Brussels is that the city has changed massively over the years. Close to 40% of the population is now foreign origin, and that demographic shift isn't just some abstract statistic. You see it in everyday life, in politics, and very obviously in moments like this. In fact, Brussels has changed so much that even the Christmas nativity scene isn't safe anymore. This year, the city unveiled what they're calling a multicultural, eco-friendly nativity, which is a polite way of saying they took the traditional figures of Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus and replaced them with faceless cloth dolls made out of leftover fabric scraps. The official explanation is that the blank faces are meant to represent all people in all skin tones. But we have to be honest here. We know why they've done this. We know who they are trying not to offend, and they aren't people native to Belgium. Apparently this is to be more inclusive, except it appears what it's actually doing is excluding what Christmas really is about. It's almost impressive, really. Brussels is one of the most transformed cities in Europe, and instead of acknowledging the cultural tension that comes with that, the city's response is to appease followers of Islam who don't actually care about Christmas to begin with. Well, hold that thought, because they did care, but not in the way perhaps the people in charge thought.
The head of the baby Jesus was at a nativity scene, then stolen overnight after a pro-Palestine mob gate-crashed Brussels Christmas markets and chanted Hamas slogans in the street. The mayor of Brussels confirmed the head of the figurine of Jesus was stolen after being by an unknown culprit who took off with the head but left the body in place Friday night. The mayor's spokesman said they would replace the baby Jesus' head. The opening of the Christmas markets and switch on of the lights at the main square was gate-crashed by a mob of pro-Palestine protesters.
Yep, as I told you, zero respect. And of course, they couldn't help but expose how violent some of their beliefs really are through this. They of course finished up by spray painting the installation. If you've been following me for a while, you know I've always said the whole Palestine issue goes way beyond Palestine. It's a hate project. A project to try and correct perceived wrongs from the past across the entire Western world. One that seeks to dismantle it completely, by the way. No amount of appeasement or inclusivity is ever going to change their minds simply because Islam as a religion is one of complete domination. Now, before we get to the next part, if you enjoyed this video so far, please remember to give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and consider signing up on Patreon, which comes with a ton of perks. Perhaps no other country has been impacted more by mass Islamic immigration than Germany. If you recall, just a decade ago, they took in over 1 million people fleeing Syria, and things have changed significantly. And it hasn't changed this year either. Take a look at this. And if that's not enough, how about this one here? And here's more outside a Christmas market.
فكرة الشرطة قالوا لي ها حصل
يا زلمه لا لا انا ما اتصور ما جيت اتصور
These people genuinely have absolutely no shame. Germany took them in, gave them refuge, gave them homes, schools, welfare, safety, everything their own countries couldn't provide. And this is how they repay it. And they specifically target Christmas events, knowing nothing will be done. They know governments and left-wing voters are too scared and too politically correct to push back. The craziest part is that Germans have already suffered more than enough because of this experiment. We're not talking about minor cultural clashes. We're talking about some of the most horrific attacks Europe has ever seen, from the Cologne New Year's assaults to the 2016 Berlin Christmas market attack. You would think after all of that, there would be at least some awareness, some respect, maybe even a bit of gratitude. But no, every year the scenes look the same or worse. Talking about these issues is also becoming harder, with both the EU and the UK passing laws for more surveillance and curbing of free speech. That's exactly why I use Proton VPN and why I think you should too. They're based in Switzerland, outside the reach of US, EU, UK and Australian law. They don't keep logs and are built by the same team behind Proton Mail. When the UK passed its surveillance laws, Proton VPN became the #1 app on the App Store. Their stealth protocol beats censorship firewalls. Secure Core routes your traffic through privacy-first countries, and NetShield blocks trackers before they ever reach you. I've used Proton Mail since Australia announced sweeping surveillance laws last year, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's now essential. If you want to protect your privacy and support this channel, hit the link below to get up to 60% off Proton VPN. This year, across Europe, we're now seeing the results. Tangibly. You walk through a Christmas market in 2025 and it doesn't look festive anymore. It looks like a checkpoint. Bollards on every corner, armed police standing beside stalls that used to sell gingerbread, and security fences wrapped around what used to be open public squares. Germany especially, it's like they've quietly accepted that Christmas is a high-risk event now. These markets were meant to be places where families wandered around with hot chocolate and kids ran around looking at lights. Now they look like soft war zones, policed by officers with rifles trying to keep the illusion of normality alive. And people pretend this is just the times we live in, rather than the direct outcome of political choices. The real damage isn't even the security theatre itself, it's the demoralization. Europeans are being conditioned to accept that their own traditions require fortifications, and that any pushback is somehow impolite or bigoted. So instead, they just internalize it, the frustration, the resentment, the sense that something precious has been taken from them and they're not allowed to say anything. But silence is, in my opinion, even more dangerous. That resentment isn't going to disappear, it builds. It sits under the surface year after year, watching their cities become unrecognizable, watching their leaders insist everything is fine, and watching the same problems repeat every single December. In fact, many of these markets are now getting cancelled because certain towns can no longer afford to pay for security. Take a look.
Das, was ich euch jetzt zeige, das habt ihr so noch nicht gesehen. Ich befinde mich gerade auf dem Magdeburger Weihnachtsmarkt. Es war früher einer der schönsten Weihnachtsmärkte, wirklich weit und breit. Eine sehr, sehr schöne, friedliche Stimmung. Und dieser Weihnachtsmarkt wurde jetzt wieder aufgebaut. Alles ist fertig. Und 2 Wochen nach Aufbau fällt dem Landesverwaltungsamt ein, die Sicherheitsvorschriften, die werden so nicht eingehalten. Wir können diesen Weihnachtsmarkt so nicht eröffnen. Die ganzen Unternehmer, die Schausteller haben alles gekauft. Es ist alles fertig. Es könnte losgehen. Aber die Stadt Magdeburg muss im Prinzip Anforderungen erfüllen, die so niemals erfüllbar sind. Terrorabwehr, Zugangskontrollen, Waffenkontrollen. Einzäunen sollte man das Ding ursprünglich, um diese Kontrollen sicherzustellen. Und das sind Zustände, worüber rede ich hier gerade?
Look, of course you need to protect people to be able to run these events, especially considering how they have been targeted. But you can't help but think these Islamic terrorists have achieved exactly what they've wanted. They've instilled a culture of terror in these countries. And weirdly, you never see Muslims in these countries rise up and police their own communities to prevent this from happening, or maybe even protest against extremism. You never see it, and I think that says a lot. In fact, as usual, almost every year, they are talking about why Muslims should absolutely not celebrate the infidel custom of Christmas. Take a look.
It's that time of the year where Christmas is fast approaching, and that means we're going to be seeing Muslims taking part, putting up Christmas trees, exchanging gifts, putting up decorations. And before any Muslim comes to me in the comments and tells me it's part of British culture that it's okay, please go and do your research. Honestly, if the reverts can do it, and some of them don't even take part in exchanging gifts, they don't put up any decorations, they don't do anything. And imagine how challenging it must be for some of them. So if they can do it, honestly, you have no excuses. And if you're that Muslim that was going to put up a tree this year, please take this as your sign. Or if you know someone who's going to take part, show them this video, let them take it as a sign. You do not have to exchange gifts. You don't have to put up a Christmas tree. You don't have to put up any decorations. You don't have to do any of it. Honestly, take it as a day off. You've got a day off of work and just go about your day like it's...
They say all that and still elect to live in the UK or Europe, not in Yemen or Iraq, where you are surrounded by Islam. What you're seeing here is basically a microcosm of the broader integration failure in Europe. The refusal to participate in national traditions, the open hostility toward Christmas, the constant reminders that these customs are haram or forbidden. It's all part of a pattern that Europe has been dealing with for years now. And none of this is happening in a vacuum. It's happening after decades of mass immigration, social fragmentation, and communities forming parallel societies with completely different values and worldviews. If anything, things are getting worse, not better. Across almost every measurable indicator, crime statistics, social cohesion, trust in institutions, ethnic enclaves, and political polarization, you can see the pressure building. In Germany alone, multiple federal reports over the last decade have talked openly about failed integration and imported anti-Semitism. For instance, Interior Ministry reports that more than 60% of their terrorist threat profile stems from radical Islamists. Sweden went from being one of the safest countries in Europe to one of the most violent, with bombings and shootings skyrocketing after 2015. This is not random. It's the predictable outcome of policies that brought in millions of people with completely different cultural frameworks, levels of development, and views on gender, religion, law, and social behavior, and then pretended that simply placing them in European cities would magically create harmony. And now you're seeing the political consequences everywhere. Germany's AfD is falling as high as 20 to 25% nationally, even becoming the strongest party in several eastern states. In the UK, Reform are now favourites to win the next election. Even traditionally progressive countries like Denmark have implemented some of the continent's strictest immigration controls simply because they had no other choice. This isn't happening because Europeans woke up one morning and decided to become right-wing. It's happening because people feel that their leaders ignored them for too long. They feel they were never asked to begin with. They feel the cultural foundations they grew up with are being chipped away, mocked, replaced, or treated as a problem to be managed rather than a heritage to be protected. And every Christmas market lined with concrete bollards, every armed patrol walking past mulled wine stalls, every loud demonstration aimed at undermining the holiday only deepens that sentiment. We are probably going to see similar war zone-like Christmas markets next year, but one thing I know is this won't go on forever. Something has to change.
In the neon haze of a broken dawn, steel towers hum, but the wild runs on. A shadow moves through the circus below, half machine, half beast, with a violet glow. They thought the outback was lost to the flame, but a ding